Hello everyone, and welcome to Part 2 of the history of advanced Yakuza combos. In this part, I will be covering the games that comprise the late PS3 era of the series, namely Yakuza 5, Yakuza 0, and Yakuza Kiwami. Beginning with Yakuza 5. Yakuza 5 is the final game in what is sometimes referred to as the PS3 trilogy, consisting of 3, 4, and 5. These games are all similar to each other, though the jump from 4 to 5 is much bigger than the one from 3 to 4. Yakuza 5 still draws from the systems of the previous two games, but it changes the way many of them work, and I'll go into detail when I get to its section. Before that, there are some corrections and additions suggested to me by my friends and fellow community members regarding the games in the previous part. Regarding Yakuza 2, I neglected to mention the fact that Yakuza 2 also has a reversal tech just like 3 and 4, though it is executed differently. I did know about this, but I omitted it from the section since the reversal attacks in the PS2 games are more so about crowd control rather than combo usage. Though like I said in the previous video, OG2 is still a pretty unpopular game, so I can't rule out the possibility that some use for this tech may be found in the future. Also for Yakuza 2, I received some clarification from Dylan T about a unique property of the Hayashi fight. Apparently, after a leg grab, if you attack Hayashi as soon as he gets up, he will not block at all, which makes the usage of 2ST and 4ST possible. As for Yakuza 3, according to Cone, there is a somewhat consistent way to get a shoulder grab knockdown in the remaster, which you can pause to read if you like. This method does seem to give more consistent frame advantage, but it's not a foolproof solution like he says. He also notes that the weird thing about using 3ST after 3SRS actually applies to all of your normal finishers. They all have less in lag after using a reversal beforehand, though the only practical use I know of is the one I noted with 3ST. And finally, for Yakuza 4, one thing I forgot to mention was a small detail about Akiyama's reversals. While Akiyama does not have double reverse light attacks, he can chain his reverse light attacks together to advance his combo. And with all that said, let's get into the main part of this video, starting with Yakuza 5. Alright everyone, we've entered the Dark Ages. Yakuza 5 saw a big overhaul to many of the combat systems, including back combos perform about as well as Grandpa after forgetting his boner pills, wall bounds have been changed to no longer function outside of a few very specific setups, knockdowns have been completely revamped in order to make knockdown combos impossible, the reversal tech has been removed, many moves have had their properties changed to be more similar to others, making your overall movesets feel less diverse. Kiryu now has an additional moveset that is almost completely useless even in normal gameplay. Sayuma's arguably improved in some ways from Yakuza 4, but suffers in many others. Akiyama can no longer use important moves like his heavy kick or running attack in heat mode. Akiyama gets completely shafted in terms of boss fights. Akiyama cannot do anything in this game. And those are just the tip of the iceberg. The only reason I put this game as a 2 out of 10 is because of Shinada, who actually feels like he works with the game systems rather than against them. But he's last, so we had to sift through a whole lot of shit to get there. So, I guess I'll start by elaborating on what you can do in this game. Back combos exist, but like I said, they barely function. Enemies will now do a fun thing where they just turn around as you're hitting them, or they won't get hit straight ahead, and it becomes basically impossible to back combo beyond a few hits. Quick step attack loops are still possible with Kiryu, but that's about it. It is technically still possible to hit full combos on bosses, but it requires the boss to be next to a wall and at an angle, which makes it needlessly complicated. Knockdown combos technically sort of still exist, but multiple changes have made them a non-viable combo option. You now only reset a knockdown if the enemy is in the rollover animation, as the faceplant animation gives the enemy super armor. The amount of moves that cause the rollover has been drastically reduced, and hitting an enemy anywhere but straight on will cause them to fall to the side. Wall bounding technically also exists, but if you try to do it normally, it won't work. Instead, it has been assimilated into Yakuza 5's unique and brand new combo type, wall sticks, aka wall splats as some call them. If you launch an enemy into a wall a certain way, it's possible for them to be stuck to the wall in this T-pose animation. In this animation, the enemy is completely vulnerable, and it's even possible to reset the wall stick to continue comboing. I hate wall sticks. They are super finicky and restrictive, but even then, they are still the most versatile combo type in this game. Each character has their own unique ways of going about wall sticks, so I'll discuss them as we get to them. But the general structure of a wall stick is as follows. Hit an enemy with a move that bounds them, most of the time they must be facing the wall for this to work. Then, do a specific move that causes them to stick, which tends to either be a move that sends them into the wall or one that causes a rollover. This activates the wall stick. From here, hitting the enemy will always cause this animation regardless of the move's properties, but hitting them a second time will cause them to react accordingly to your attack. This usually lets you land one move before resetting the stick, though there are exceptions. I'll begin the detailed character sections by talking about Kiryu. Kiryu is probably the best user of wall sticks next to Shinada, but most of your wall sticks are going to rely on your bounding throws. One change that really benefits Kiryu is one made to his backwards quick-step attack. It now has the ability to stun bosses, and each of them have their own setups for landing it. Kamaki Parry is still on the table if needed as well. Many of Kiryu's moves have received changes to their properties, mostly negative ones, and he now has a secondary moveset in the form of Dragon Spirit, which is essentially a precursor to Extreme Heat in future games. It's not super applicable in combos though outside of a few niche situations, so let's start going over Kiryu's moves. ST and S2T. These finishers work mostly the same as how they did in the past few games. They actually do have a bit of utility when it comes to wall sticks. Some setups include hitting an enemy next to a wall with ST and S2T, or hitting them with ST and then doing a side quick-step attack. One giant asterisk to this though. Knockdown immunity is still a thing in this game, and it's much stronger. Unlike Yakuza 3 and 4, where knockdown immunity can be bypassed until the enemy stands back up, Yakuza 5 enemies are always immune to being knocked down, even if they are in a knockdown. Your options against these enemies are much more limited. 2ST and 2S2T. We mourn the loss of the reverse 2ST animation greatly. Otherwise, while gut stunning isn't nearly as useful as parry or quick-step stunning in this game, the 2ST bounding throw is your most important tool this time around. It is far and away the most consistent wall stick setup for Kiryu. Simply hit the bounding throw on the enemy's back, throw them into the wall at an angle, do your standing heavy kick, and then side quick-step attack. This same setup is also doable with 3ST and 4ST's bounding throws, but they are far less consistent. 2S2T is still a pretty useless move. It can't be converted off of in a wall stick because it can't be cancelled, and it won't even hit after 2ST regardless. 3ST and 3S2T. 3ST isn't super useful outside of its bounding throw setup, though it does have one other application in a wall stick, where you can whiff your first light attack, then hit the next two and do the finisher. This will put the enemy in a rollover, and you can do a quick step attack out of the finisher to reset. From here, simply heavy kick and quick step attack to reset the stick completely. 3S2T is mostly useless now that it no longer low bounces. 4ST and 4S2T. These are mostly the same idea as 3ST and 3S2T, though 4ST has some extra use as a setup move as it will cause a bound. The bounding throw can work like I said, but it's very inconsistent. 4S2T is also just pretty useless. You may have been able to tell, but Kiryu is able to quick-step cancel in this game while in heat mode, which is a huge improvement. Even if he couldn't though, bounding throws do not require heat, so heat management is not very important in this game. The only thing it is important for is if you want to use Dragon Spirit. There's not much point in going into detail on Dragon Spirit's unique moves, as they can't really be used in back combos and many of them can't be used for wall sticks. Dragon Spirit does allow for some very basic knockdown combos using some of its light attacks, or even its dash which has a hitbox, but it's not super useful otherwise. Since your options for wall sticks are so limited, many players will try to supplement with weapons such as nunchucks or knuckles. While the reversal tech is not in this game, many players will opt to use them during a wall stick just to look cool. Pretty much any attack can be used right after a wall stick as long as you can cancel it, since the first hit always plays a set animation. Before moving on, I'd like to point out that there are many wall stick setups that I didn't cover, like the grab light and heavy attacks, and that there is a video by Fast which showcases these, which I will link in the description if you're interested. One thing that wall sticks have going for them is the wide array of heat action finishers which are possible. The wall stick animation is quite long and doesn't have many heat action restrictions placed on it, so you can do just about whatever you want. You can grab the enemy to do a grab heat action, you can pull out a weapon, you can hit them and let them drop to the ground to do a ground heat action, you can grab an object in the arena to do a heat action, and you even have enough time to do the Dragon Spirit exclusive one. All three of his climax heat actions are usable as well. The sky's the limit, and I would encourage you to experiment if wall sticks didn't suck so badly. As for bosses, this is also an improvement from Yakuza 4. It's still not great, but bosses have far fewer issues in this game for the most part. Yahata is a decent pick, though he is in the middle of a long battle. Aizawa would be good, but he has knockdown immunity, so your combo options are limited against him. Your best bet is probably Watase, as he doesn't have knockdown immunity and has okay health, though he is after a long battle. Bosses in this game have generally very low health, so I would recommend installing a health mod if you're on PC. And that's about all I have to say on Kiryu. There's definitely something here, but your options here are still much more limited than in previous games. At the end of the day, he's still fine and not as bad as Saejima or especially Akiyama. Like last time, Saejima is the second character up, and I doubt I'll have much to discuss. He arguably has had some very good changes made, as his charge speeds have been sped up significantly, and he now has access to a stunning move in the form of Tiger Dragon Drop in a game where star stuns are much more important than gut stuns. Tiger Puppetry is a very good crowd control option, and it's actually usable on bosses in most situations unlike the other three red heat skills. That being said, while he does have certain wall stick options, he still doesn't have that much. There are three main ways that Saejima can set up a wall stick, being 1. Throwing. Saejima's throw now applies the high bounce effect, which causes a wall bound if done close to the wall. Simply do your standing heavy kick on the enemy to stick them. 2. Heavy grab attack. This one works charged or uncharged, though the uncharged version is usually better. Same idea of just kicking the enemy into the wall. 3. Running attack grab. Saejima's running attack command grab was also given the high bounce property in this game, and if you do it away from a wall, Saejima will throw the enemy into the wall. This one is more niche than the other two, but it's useful on enemies that won't let you grab them anymore, or ones with knockdown immunity. Your combo options within a wall stick are as follows. 1. 3S charge T and 3S charge TT. Make sure to whiff the light attacks and don't do the third finisher. Simply do your heavy kick to reset. 2. 2S charge T and 2S charge TT. Same idea, with the light attacks and kick to reset. And that's it. Weapons can of course be used for variety, but this is literally all Saejima does. So, heat actions. Pretty much all the same stuff Kiryu can do. Grabs, objects, weapons. You can even get your clothesline heat action out of your running attack. All climax heat actions are usable as well. For bosses, Baba and Katsuya are both good, though they are after long battles. Majima and Kiryu both use Komaki cat-like reflexes, which makes wall sticks impossible. Majima's arena doesn't even have walls even if you wanted to combo him. And I don't think I need to explain why Yama Orochi isn't an option. Also in my script I forgot to mention Aizawa and Kugihara. Aizawa has knockdown immunity and Kugihara has low health, so neither are ideal. Saejima is more so a buttons character in this game, which I feel is exemplified by Tiger Puppetry. He doesn't have very good combos, but is much better at just throwing out moves, which is why I actually kinda like playing as him in this game. Just not for combo purposes. And now we have a character which I don't like playing in this game at all. Akiyama was the most fun character to play as in Yakuza 4, and he is now very much the least fun in this game. How could such a drastic change happen? Well, Akiyama's playstyle does not agree with the engine changes made going into Yakuza 5. Akiyama was very good at knockdowns, but he has very few tools for wall sticks, and his abundance of hits causes bosses to break out of back combos extremely quickly. This is not to mention the fact that Akiyama has a total of two bosses, Ogita and Kanai, 4 times. Ogita is wall stickable, but he is completely immune to Akiyama's air combos and has low health. Kanai has knockdown immunity and is thus immune to wall sticks due to Akiyama's poor pool of setup options. Kanai's first fight actually has a glitch where he can be back comboed indefinitely until the second phase, but that's it. At most, you can get one short combo by using the wall tech. Akiyama can do some setups with his air attacks, but with both of his bosses being immune, your only stick option is a grab heavy attack into a light attack, which only works on Ogita. Hey, editing curve here, that's actually kind of a lie. There are a couple more, which I will be playing on screen right now, with varying degrees of practicality. It is possible to get some resticks with 4S3T, but that's about it. It sucks because Akiyama theoretically can do some cool stuff, which is shown by what he can do if you mod him to fight a different boss, but in vanilla, he can't do much of anything. This is not to mention the fact that he can't even use his standing heavy kick or his running attack if he's in heat mode, and they get replaced with much worse versions. At the very least, he does have some useful heat actions. He has his wall heat action, all the standard grab and object heat actions, and of course all his climax heat actions. I really wish I had more to say about Akiyama. Sorry. So we finally made it to Shinada, and despite being the character that most people like playing the least, he is far and away my favorite character to play in this game. That being said, this is still Yakuza 5, and Shinada still prioritizes short combos and heat actions over long, elaborate combos. He still has some cool tech that I would like to discuss though. Shinada's rush combo isn't super important to his overall game plan, but I still will cover it briefly. ST. Like Tanimura, Shinada does not have any double finishers. Unlike Tanimura, Shinada only has a 3-hit rush combo. Despite his rush combo being pretty unremarkable overall, this is the first time I feel the need to highlight a specific light attack. For some reason, RGG gave Shinada's 1S the long hit stun animation. Light attacks generally apply one of two animations: the short animation where the enemy stands in place, and the long animation where the enemy steps forward. Usually, the long animation is reserved for later attacks in a rush combo. Since Shinada's 1S causes the long animation, you can actually do taps on a boss's back to set up back combos. Since Shinada's rush combo is so short, he isn't as affected by the back combo nerfs either. ST is a pretty good move, as it's quick, long-ranged, and causes a gut stun. Shinada also has bounding throws like Kiryu, though they aren't as useful for setting up wall sticks in the same way that his are. There's not much reason to use a specific bounding throw over another. The only real factor is the finisher that it's attached to, which makes the ST bounding throw the best one by default. 2ST. 2ST is a Superman punch, and it's not all that great. Its hitbox is pretty bad, so the only real way to land this move is in a back combo or out of a stick. 3ST. 3ST is a double-handed swing emulating that of a baseball player. It's good in that it hits rather low, and it even causes a new hit animation. This is the stumble. No, not that stumble. This is a new stumble animation that was introduced in Yakuza 5. Yes, there's a difference. With the old stumble, the enemy will always turn away from you. With the new one, they will stay facing the same direction they were facing when you hit them. It's possible to grab someone out of a front stumble, but not a back stumble. So that's Shinada's rush combo. It's not all that special, but like I said, it's his other abilities that really hold everything together. To start, how does Shinada start a wall stick? Well, there's 3 main ways. 1. Back grabs. By grabbing an enemy from the back, you can use Shinada's heavy grab attack toward a wall to set up a stick. Unlike everyone else's though, Shinada's heavy grab cannot bound on its own. You have to kick the enemy up and then punch them to get them to stick. It's worth mentioning that Shinada's parry will immediately set up a back grab, though bosses like to break out of this. The Hercules gloves are pretty much mandatory for Shinada. 2. Tackle. Shinada's red heat ability is his tackle, and it has quite a bit of utility. If you tackle an enemy from the back, you can push them away into a wall, which will cause them to bound. Simply punch them to get them to stick. Watch how much you use the tackle though, as enemies can escape or just throw you off altogether. Those are 2 of the ways that Shinada can set up wall sticks, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to be doing the third option. 3. The wall stick heat action. Shinada just straight up has a heat action that will automatically stick an enemy to a wall, and it's exceedingly easy to use. This heat action can be activated if the enemy bounds off of a wall, or even if they're just simply on the ground near a wall. This is a 3-stage heat action. The first stage happens if you activate the heat action while the enemy is on the ground and near a wall. Hit the button prompt and you will go to stage 2. Stage 2 will automatically happen if you activate the heat action during a bound. Do the button prompt or activate while an enemy is in a wall stick and you will get to stage 3. 99% of the time you want to end this heat action at stage 2, as that's the one that sticks the enemy. This heat action is extremely useful because it bypasses the inconsistency of most wall stick setups, and also has the most use cases of all the setups. It can be done out of a finisher, or a bounding throw, or a light grab, or the heavy grab setup, or the tackle release setup. You can even just tackle an enemy straight into a wall, kick them, and then do the heat action. It's important to note that this heat action will always cause a front-facing stick. Back-facing wall sticks aren't quite as crucial for Shinada as they are for Saejima and Kiryu, since Shinada has no real way to reset from a back-facing stick. But it is generally better to have an enemy in a back-facing stick, as it makes follow-ups work more consistently. There is a way to get a backward stick off of this heat action though, and it involves what I call an unstick. There's two ways to get an enemy to unstick from a wall. You can either stick them and then try to wedge yourself between them and the wall, or you can make them stick to thin air in the first place. This is done by either letting them bound far enough from the wall before activating the heat action, or by getting to the edge of the activation box for the heat action while they're on the ground. After you have the enemy unstuck from the wall, you want to do your heavy kick behind the enemy and towards the wall. After the kick, aim behind you and tackle the enemy from behind. Immediately turn around and send them into the wall, then punch them to reset. Once you have an enemy in a wall stick, there's not really a correct course of action for what to do next. Like I said, Shinada can't really restick an enemy from here, so you kinda just have to pick a finisher. You do have quite a few options though. You can do a lot with Shinada's unique weapon movesets. They have their own heat actions for pulling them out and having them out. You can go for a grab heat action out of a bounding throw, as Shinada has the unique ability to grab enemies out of bounding throws. You can try to unstick the enemy again to go for a back grab heat action, or even the tackle heat action. Or you can of course just use a climax heat action. As for bosses, Baba is probably your best bet, even if he's after a long battle. Daigo has way too much armor and way too little health, and all of your other options also deal with low health. So, overall thoughts on Yakuza 5? Yakuza 0 is the game that I say most exemplifies how the combat rating that I give for these games is solely for the advanced combos, and not necessarily the combat as a whole. 0 is a really fun game to play, but it is pretty devoid of any kind of high-level tech. For a game to be below a 5 out of 10 for me, it has to actively piss me off in some way. While Yakuza 5 does that, 0 does not. While 5 is a game that feels like it doesn't work half the time and is trying to make you have a miserable experience, 0 is a perfectly fine gameplay experience that just doesn't have much else going on. To briefly overview what 0 does have, back combos make a return and they sort of function. Still not anything too crazy though. Wall bounding also makes a glorious return, but it's also not enough to do all too much with. If I were to be covering mods in this video, we'd have a whole lot more to talk about. Legend Remix 0 is a mod that completely overhauls this game's combat by adding knockdown combos into the game, adding a ton of heat actions, making a ton of your moves faster, expanding your movesets, and more. Without mods, you're forced to enter the menu to activate the Legend style, which makes them completely impossible to use in most combos. And what maybe hurts the most is that, without mods, Majima cannot get the quick change clothes, which gives you the ability to style switch cancel your attacks. Because of this, Majima combos kind of don't exist. Because of Yakuza 0's more freeform combat, I'm gonna do this section a little differently. I'll still go over the different utility that each move has, just in a more general combat sense rather than strictly for combos. There's 8 styles to go through, so I will try to go as quickly as possible, starting with Brawler, ST. A very quick move that can be used in back combos on bosses with knockdown immunity, assuming you're using quick change clothes. On normal enemies, it just sends them right to the ground. Yakuza 0 also does a weird thing where certain moves can have different hit effects depending on how you got to them. Brawler ST is the first example of this, as while normal ST knocks enemies to the ground, RST will apply specifically the Yakuza 4 stumble. 2ST. This is your main gut stun attack. Gut stuns regain much of their usefulness from Yakuza 3 and 4, and this move being very fast and usable in a back combo really helps. This has the same quirk of ST, where SRST will cause this move to use the flying animation, which is technically from Yakuza 5, but it wasn't that important there. It essentially acts as a replacement for the old tumble animation. This animation has an important piece of tech associated with it, which will become important when we talk about Rush. 3ST. No reverse light attack shenanigans this time. This is a very solid move. It has a good hitbox, is fast enough for a back combo, and is usable in a bound. It also has an associated heat action, which makes it a decent finisher. 4ST and 4S2T. The only brawler attack with a double finisher. 4ST has some trouble hitting in a back combo due to having a somewhat short hitbox, and also because literally every brawler light attack applies the long animation where the enemy steps away from you, so it will whiff on occasion. 4S2T is kind of just a worse version of Dragon's 4S2T, as it's oftentimes just negative on hit and doesn't give much reward for landing it. Other brawler attacks worth mentioning are the standing kick, which, like Akiyama's, is a multi-part attack, though it is much slower, so you generally only want to use the first hit. It is possible to use this in a back combo, and you can actually hit an enemy off the ground with it after the 3STC command grab, which can start a bound. Brawler also has quick step attacks, but the only one with combo utility is the forward one. This one can be used in a back combo with good timing, but only on enemies with knockdown immunity. Rush. Rush only has 2 finishers, with like 8 asterisks. So the thing about Rush is that you have 8 light attacks, and doing a finisher on the 1st through 5th light attack will do a punch finisher, while doing a finisher on the 6th through 8th light attack will do a kick finisher. Every punch finisher is identical, and every kick finisher is identical. However, you can charge these finishers, except ST for some reason, and these will do basically the same animation for each punch and kick finisher. So that means Rush has 4 finishers, right?
Wrong!
I guess to differentiate these finishers, RGG decided to give them all different hit effects, with the exception of 6 and 7S charge T. To very quickly go over these, 2S charge T, soft knockdown, 3S charge T, hard knockdown, 4S charge T, Yakuza 4 stumble, 5S charge T, flyback, 6 and 7S charge T, hard knockdown, and 8S charge T, flyback. And the thing about this is that the charge times for these are so long that they are completely impractical to hit unless you very methodically count your hits so that the very last light attack stuns the boss so you can hit them with the charge attack. Back combos are weird in the sense that they're basically random, only working about 20% of the time. Rush's stun ability is often used to make these more consistent, and not to land a hyper-specific attack that immediately resets the playing field since you're in 8,000 years of in-lag and can't convert off of them outside of super niche scenarios. Speaking of setting up back combos, probably the most common way is with Rush's parry. It's basically a direct upgrade from Tanimoto's parry in Yakuza 4. For one, you actually have decent frame advantage and can follow up on a parried enemy consistently. Also, unlike Tanimoto's parry, which is a passive state that relies on an enemy directly hitting you, Rush's parry is activated via a button press. This is good because the activation box for your parry is fucking enormous. You can parry enemies from like 18 feet away. This goes into that tech I mentioned earlier with the flyback hit animation. This animation actually gives the enemy you applied it to a collateral hitbox, meaning that you can use that enemy to hit more enemies. However, despite this being a friendly hitbox that you made, this hitbox can be parried. One thing that makes this super useful is that enemies parried out of a flyback are almost guaranteed to successfully enter a back combo, even if they weren't in one before being hit with the flyback effect. This technically makes it possible to loop enemies without knockdown immunity. It's worth mentioning that this collateral hitbox can theoretically be hit with any kind of counter, but will only work with command grab type counters such as the rush parry. To close this section about Rush after that little tangent, your heavy kick, or punch I guess, is usable in a back combo, as is your circle attack, which is not a grab, but instead a kick, which is just a reused animation from 8S. Unfortunately, unlike Brawler, Rush's quick-step attacks have a huge delay to them and cannot be used in a back combo. Beast. Beast is pretty simple. It's the power style, and therefore most of its moves are too slow to be used in combos. It's more of a crowd control style than anything. ST. ST is kind of a sad case because it's almost usable. It works in a back combo on normal enemies, at which point they get knocked down, but just barely doesn't work on enemies with knockdown immunity half of the time, where it could be comboed out of. It's not a great move otherwise. 2ST. 2ST just can't do anything for combos at all. However, it does have a small niche use as a combo setup due to its unique ability to bypass guards. If you attack an enemy who's getting up, they will immediately block, but you can use this attack to bypass their guard and knock them down. From there, you can pick them up off the ground to start a combo. It's been a minute since I've talked about the shoulder pickup, so to refresh your memory, while it has always had the ability to stun enemies, it didn't get the ability to stun bosses until Yakuza 5, though that wasn't super important in that game. 3ST. 3ST is surprisingly fast for a beast attack, but the problem comes in how slow 3S is. Even on enemies without knockdown immunity, it is just barely too slow to use in a back combo. However, the enemy usually can't turn around that much, so it'll still hit. And considering that 3ST is fast and causes a flyback, you can probably get away with it. While Beast does have a decent array of moves, most of them aren't super useful. You do have a few command grabs which are pretty nice. There's a grab that's done by quick stepping and pressing circle, though it only works on the second heat bar for some reason. And you also have a bear hug which is crazy strong but can only be done on third heat. Time to move on. Dragon. Unfortunately, Kiryu's Dragon style has been heavily neutered from Yakuza 5. Yakuza 0 back combos are generally lenient enough for you to be able to use Dragon with lower heat levels, but Dragon is so slow outside of third heat that it makes a huge difference in utility. Quickstep attacks are completely gone, your counters have been changed to worse versions of their old ones, and you can't even use it in a combo without a mod. It's still the Dragon style, so it can only get so bad though. Truth be told, this style is nearly identical to how it was in Yakuza 5 apart from the aforementioned nerfs. There are a few things I'd like to mention though, mostly regarding with how it interacts with various engine changes. 2ST is usable in a back combo on enemies without knockdown immunity. 4ST has a similar problem to Beast 3ST, where it's just barely too slow to always connect, but you can usually get a parry off of it anyway. Hey, so just to ignore what I just said, I've been playing with Legend Style Fix for so long that I forgot that not only can you not go into Legend Style without entering the menu, you also can't exit it without entering the menu in vanilla Yakuza 0. So yeah, there's no comboing whatsoever with this style. So you cannot get a parry off of 4ST or anything like that. I also make the same mistake later with Mad Dog style for Majima. Just keep that in mind, you cannot go out of Legend Style either. The 2ST bounding throw works similarly to how it does in Yakuza 5, but when you kick the enemy up onto a wall, it does abide by the wall bound limit, and you of course can't wall stick the enemy because that doesn't exist in this game. Your standing kick works closer to how it does in Yakuza 3 and 4 than how it does in Yakuza 5. And despite Yakuza 0 giving nearly every light attack the long animation, Dragon 1S still doesn't have it, and this actually makes ST unusable in a back combo, even on enemies without knockdown immunity. Thug. This is Majima's standard style, and it's his most versatile one by far. Majima's other styles are burdened by the fact that they are gimmicks, and thus have very niche uses. This is not to mention that due to his lack of quick change close, his combos are limited to one style at a time. ST. This move is really bad. Don't use it. Shitty hitbox and a crazy amount of end lag. 2ST. This is Majima's eye poke, which sort of acts as an analog to the gut stun. It's not nearly as useful though, as it doesn't knock enemies down, and its quote-unquote stun effect only applies to basic enemies. At the very least, it works, unlike ST. 3ST. Yep, that's a kick. It knocks enemies down, and it would actually be pretty good if Majima could cancel out of it. 4ST. This is actually a good move for a few reasons. First of all, it can actually be quickstep cancelled, which is actually kind of rare for this game. This finisher also applies the Yakuza 5 stumble effect, which is nice for setting up a grab or a wall bound. Also, this move really, and I mean really, likes to sneak past guards for some reason. Overall, this is a move that you want to use constantly, though it is at that weird middle point in speed where sometimes it will work in a back combo and sometimes it won't. 5ST. This is kind of an Akiyama situation where you can spam the light attack button to do a big flurry of them, but they all lead into the same finisher, so I'm bundling them all into 5ST. It's a finisher, alright. Fast enough to use in a back combo, but you don't get much reward off of it. Majima has a counter in the form of Harsh Lesson, which is a command grab that unfortunately doesn't lend much reward. The most you can get off of it is a standing kick, which can lead to a bound if you're close enough to a wall. Majima's Thug standing kick is, believe it or not, one of his best moves, and one of the best standing kicks in the whole series. It's a fast animation with incredibly short end lag for a standing kick. It's one of the few standing kicks that can be comboed out of, including in both a back combo and a wall bound, and its end lag is even short enough that you have enough time to style switch after setting up a bound and still hit the enemy. Other than that, Majima also has quick step attacks in Thug. Forward and back aren't great, but his side quick step attacks are decent. Sadly, they're just barely too slow to be comboed out of in a back combo, but their long range and quick animations make them good pokes nonetheless. Slugger. Considering that Slugger is a Majima style and it isn't Thug, it's a ginormous gimmick. Slugger has the same problem as Beast, where most of its attacks are just too slow, but Slugger has the added nerf of being unable to use finishers near walls unless you're at third heat. ST. Theoretically usable in a back combo due to its relative speed for a Slugger finisher, if Majima could style switch cancel. Otherwise, it kinda just knocks an enemy down and doesn't play to Slugger's crowd control strength. 2ST and 2S Charge T. You can charge this finisher. It's the same animation, but the uncharged version does the fall over animation, and the charged version does the flyback animation. This attack is difficult to use either way because it's incredibly slow. You have better finishers that hit multiple enemies. 3ST. This is a mashable finisher, and it's kinda just a better version of ST. It's much stronger and hits more consistently. Another one that's theoretically usable in a back combo. 4ST. Big giant finisher you use to hit a lot of people. No combo utility. 5ST. This move is kind of a mix between 2ST and 4ST. It's pretty strong, can hit multiple enemies, causes a flyback, but is on the slow side. Good for crowd control, but not much else. Not to mention that 5S is so slow that it can't even be used in a back combo. Slugger has quick step attacks, but they're so slow you shouldn't even bother, and Slugger of course lacks a quick step cancel anyway. Slugger has a counter. I don't recommend using it though, because unlike every other Tiger Drop style counter in the game, it does not have invincibility. Like Rush, your circle attack is not a grab, but is instead a poke with your bat. The only reason you would use this is because it has a heat action attached to it, though it is another theoretically can be used in a back combo if Majima could cancel it move. Breaker. Whereas Slugger's gimmick was bat, Breaker's gimmick is that every finisher is a mashable finisher that ends with or can be cancelled into a secondary state that can also be cancelled, can lead into a pseudo double finisher, or can lead into a counter that is specific to each freeze pose. It's also worth mentioning that being in third heat gives your light attacks more hits, which may or may not affect how good they are in a back combo, I'm not sure. Breaker is a surprisingly complex style on paper, but in practice it's really just spin to win. ST and STXT. ST is the only breaker attack usable in a back combo. You can repeat it up to 4 times. By doing so, or by cancelling the attack with X, you can do STXT, which causes the Yakuza 5 stumble. And this actually makes it possible to set up a wall bound with, though this attack is rather slow to come out. The STX freeze counter causes a low bounce, but bosses really love to block the second hit. I guess I should clarify that freeze counters can be a bit difficult to use because enemies really don't like trying to hit you while you're in a freeze pose. You can try and enrage the enemy, which doesn't really work on bosses, or you can bait an attack. This is usually done by either initiating your freeze pose while they're already in a long attack animation, or abusing the fact that bosses generally like to throw something out as soon as they get up. 2ST and 2STXT. Both of these moves are just big giant hit everyone attacks that are really good at knocking a ton of enemies down. It is technically possible to use 2ST on an enemy's back, but it's very impractical. The 2STX freeze counter is pretty unremarkable, but at least it actually works. 3ST and 3STXT. These attacks are kinda just better and stronger versions of 2ST and 2STXT. Can't be used in a back combo though, so I guess it does have that. The freeze counter is similarly just okay. 4ST and 4STXT. 4ST is kinda just a worse version of the previous 2 moves because it leaves you with a giant rotating blind spot. 4STXT is kinda unique though, in that it's a single hit that causes a low bounce, which allows you to do a heat action. Why do 4STXT and Charge T allow you to do this heat action while the STX freeze counter doesn't? No clue. Speaking of freeze counters though, this one is a command grab. which is cool. Another move you want to use is basically Breaker's version of a quickstep attack, which is a command grab done by quickstepping and pressing circle. This requires heat, but can only be done in second heat for some reason, like that one beast grab. You do also have a gut stun option in the form of your running attack, but it's hard to land, especially due to being a multi-hit which causes bosses to block it. Mad Dog. Mad Dog is weird. It's yet another gimmick style where the gimmick is the running state you enter after a finisher that lets you basically repeat the finisher over and over again. I don't see much of a point in going over the rush combo, seeing that most of the attacks do the exact same thing. Each finisher has some kind of kick followed by the exact same slash, which leads into the run. None of these kicks knock the enemy down except for 4ST. All of the slashes cause the Yakuza 5 stumble, except ST, which just knocks them down. What's especially odd is that the follow-up slashes either knock the enemy down or cause the Yakuza 4 stumble. There's technically more to this style, but let's be honest, if you're choosing to use Mad Dog style, it's because of this. I feel obligated to mention that Majima can do a kind of style switch combo. So if you utilize his whole like slugger style switch attack thing after doing certain moves, you can actually manage to combo between styles, but this usually involves hitting like one attack, maybe, and then switching to a different style after you switch from slugger. Yeah, let's be real here, this isn't helping his case at all. Yakuza 0 is such an enigma. It simultaneously has so much and so little. At its best, Yakuza 0 is an incredibly fun and free-flowing game, but it's missing a lot of little things previous games had that made their advanced combat feel so nice to experience. Not to mention that one of its two characters completely lacks a key game mechanic and is heavily limited because of it. There was so much potential for this game to be incredibly deep, but it just missed the mark. There's a reason why there's so many mods that fix the relatively small issues this game has that prevents it from reaching its true potential. At the very least, the core combat is still fun, and the mods are there if you want a more complex experience. Sadly, we do have to sacrifice Majima going into the next game, but in return, we get what many consider to be one of the best advanced combat systems in the entire series. Yakuza Kiwami is the first game to really feel like it has similar complexity to other character action games, and from what I can tell, it seems like it was a complete accident. While Kiwami builds off of Zero's combat, there are quite a few changes made to differentiate it. Namely, back combos now work much more consistently. Wall bounding technically exists, but has been made so much harder to access that it's rarely used in combos. And even if it was, every boss under the goddamn sun has knockdown immunity now. Style switch canceling now works much differently. Instead of being a straight up animation cancel, for all finishers, and specifically for Beast, all light attacks as well, the animation will continue playing in full before switching. It's also possible to do this type of style switch during a quick step. Multiple finishers have had their effects change, though this doesn't really matter due to the abundance of knockdown immune bosses. Yakuza 0's gear system, where your combo speed increases the more heat you have, is now gone, except for in Dragon, which gains a massive speed boost when in heat mode. Dragon can now be activated without entering the menu. Dragon is now a fully complete style, as it regains its counters, quick-step attacks, and it has many new heat actions. Each style has a unique heat ability activated by pressing both triggers while in red heat. Brawlers, beasts, and dragons are pretty useless for combos, but rushes is very important. To start off, it's important to fully understand how the new style switching system works. Kiryu natively has the ability to style switch cancel some of his moves in the same way that he could with quick change clothes. This is actually really important with Rush's heavy attack, as it allows for a quick and easy style change on the fly without any crazy tech. Especially useful since the vast majority of your combos are now going to start in Rush style after a parry. There are other ways to do the new insta-switch, as I'll call it, being getting hit, taunting, or throwing something, but the only ones you need to worry about are your finishers and quick steps. Now, depending on what style you're in and what attack you're using, you may have to use a finisher insta-switch or a quick step insta-switch. though generally, quick-step insta-switch is better. The only time you really want to use finisher insta-switch is after Brawler 2ST, as you can't quick-step cancel Brawler attacks, and this is the only one that causes enough hit stun to be comboed off of. For Rush, you can really only use your light attacks, as your finishers have too much in-lag and can't be quick-step cancelled. Dragon is the only style where you can realistically use the quick-step insta-switch after a finisher, as your first finishers can be quick-step cancelled. It's also possible to combo off of your quick-step attacks after an insta-switch, due to a quirk with how it works. Because a quick-step insta-switch requires you to complete the animation of the quick-step, it's possible to switch during the animation and then activate the quick-step attack of the style you just switched from. For example, if you quick-step attack in Dragon style, switch to Brawler, and quickly do the attack, you'll do the Dragon animation instead of Brawler's, because you're still in the animation of the Dragon quick-step. This is great and all, but there are still attacks that can't be comboed off of regardless of if you use these methods. There is another tech that allows most other moves like Brawler 4ST and Beast light attacks to be cancelled though, being the Rush Weave Cancel. This tech can also be done with Dragon finishers, and each move has its own specific timing that you need to learn. It requires you to finisher insta-switch to Rush and immediately Weave cancel the attack by pressing Quickstep. You must then cancel the Weave by doing a light attack. It's also possible to double switch from your starting style into Rush and then into another style in one fluid motion. If you do this, you may notice that you will do a Rush attack when cancelling the Weave regardless of what style you're in. This follows the same logic as the Quickstep insta-switch. Rush's Weave acts similarly to your normal Quickstep, whereas your Quicksteps can only lead into the Quickstep attacks of the specific style you initiated the Quickstep in, the Weave will only lead into normal Rush attacks. All you have to do is tap the enemy, then wait a short period, and then you can go ahead and start using the attacks of whatever style you switched into. Even with this though, your pool of usable moves is still limited. Brawler ST and 3ST can't be insta-switched out of or Weave cancelled, Dragon 4ST is too slow, and Beast's everything is still too slow to be usable even with Weave cancelling. But here's where the crazy shit happens. Rush's Red Heat ability, which I briefly mentioned, completely changes how comboing in this game works. This ability is known as Time for Godspeed, or simply just Godspeed for short. Its primary function is that it increases the speed of all of your attacks, but it has a secondary buff that allows you to quick-step cancel literally anything. And by anything, I mean anything. Brawler finishers, Rush finishers, Beast anything, Dragon double finishers. You can even quick-step cancel quick-step attacks. Before going over how to effectively combo while in Godspeed mode, we first need to discuss how to correctly up and re-up Godspeed in a combo. There's two ways to start a combo in Godspeed. You can either parry and attack the enemy from the back and rush until they get stunned, at which point you can activate Godspeed and continue the back combo, or you can parry, hit the enemy a few times with your light attacks, and then quickly cancel the final light attack by activating Godspeed. From here, you can even switch styles to cancel the activation animation and still have enough time to continue comboing. Now, this is simple enough, but managing to reapply Godspeed during a combo is a different story. The basic idea of activating Godspeed right after a rushed light attack is still there, but between Godspeed's time limit and the heat requirement, it's impossible to have 100% Godspeed uptime without using the Ward God Talisman or something. Or it would be if not for another specific piece of tech that solves this issue. Before your time limit on Godspeed runs out, if you go into Dragon style, do an attack just like you normally would, and then Weave cancel it so fast that you can't even see the Weave animation, it's possible to enter this hyper-specific state that allows this tech to work. If you notice, there's a split second where Kiryu is in Rush style, but the game hasn't updated yet and still thinks that he's in Dragon style. One unique property of Dragon style is that its heat bar is entirely comprised of red heat. This normally doesn't have a huge effect on gameplay, but one thing it does change is that it allows you to activate Time of Yinglong, Dragon's red heat ability, as long as you have any heat at all, instead of requiring a nearly maxed out bar like with the other styles. Now, of course, Time of Yinglong isn't very useful for us. We're trying to use Time for Godspeed, but what happens when the game still thinks Kiryu is in Dragon when he's actually in Rush? Well, when you press both triggers during this state, Kiryu says, "Hey game, can I activate my red heat ability?" And the game, thinking he's still in Dragon style, says, "Go ahead, you're in Dragon style so you've got red heat." Even though Kiryu isn't actually in Dragon style, the game gives him the go-ahead to activate his red heat ability with what normally would be an insufficient heat bar. But since Kiryu is actually in Rush style, he ends up activating Time for Godspeed instead of Time of Yinglong. The timing for this is pretty tight, but with enough practice, you'll get a good rhythm for it. So what can you actually do in a combo while Godspeed is active? Well, like I said, just about anything. But there are a few things to note while doing Godspeed combos. While Brawler's finishers and Dragon's double finishers can now be quickstep cancelled, it's still important to learn the weave cancel timings for these, as trying to convert off of a quickstep attack won't work 100% of the time. Rush's finishers can now also be cancelled, though these will cancel into a weave no matter what, so be ready for that. Beast is also now usable, but you must weave cancel everything. Beast's quickstep is just too slow and doesn't have any quickstep attacks to compensate. Even despite the speed buff, Beast 2ST is still too slow to be used. ST and 3ST are still on the table as long as you learn the weave cancel timings. Beast light attacks are also the only light attacks to be weave cancelable, so it's also possible to stick to those during a Godspeed combo. One good thing about Godspeed combos is that you can do pretty much anything you want during them as long as you know the tech and can execute it properly. Because basically every boss has knockdown immunity, you don't have to worry about move properties all that much. And it even allows you to do some crazy shit like weapon attacks, reversals, and even drop kicks mid-combo. The greatest thing about Kiwami is that you have options. For your combos, for your finishers, for the boss you do the combos on, you have options. Hey, so a little interjection that we got going on here. My friend Doodles asked me to include a little segment about this reverse backstep tech, as it's called. But from what I can tell, it's a way to do a sort of weird backwards quick step after a reversal, and it just helps you do some extra stuff. I've seen backwards quick step attacks that are done towards the enemy that you can do in combos, and it helps with getting the stun property off of the dragon backward quick step attack. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but Doodles does have a video that he's working on which explains some of the more minor small techs that you can do in this game, which I will have linked whenever that is finished. Back to the video. Now let's talk about why I don't like Kiwami. You saw that 4 out of 10 in the intro card. That wasn't a typo. I don't want this section to be a biased I hate Kiwami segment. Just take what I'm about to say as an explanation of why you might not like this game's advanced combat, speaking from my personal experience. I have a few major issues with Kiwami, starting with how combos just don't feel that good to do in multiple ways. Needless to say, they are fast. Very fast. It's emblematic of how Kiwami prioritizes raw speed of your inputs over strategy and planning. One thing that I've always thought makes Yakuza stand out from other character action games is that while its combos are often slower, they're far more deliberate with each and every move. This is not to say that other games are solely about mashing buttons with no thought whatsoever, or that Yakuza is incapable of having fast, high execution combos. But it's clear that Yakuza has previously done this as a way to differentiate itself. Take Yakuza 3 and 4 for example. Each move that each character has its own unique effect, and its own use cases that have little overlap with other moves, both in and outside of the context of combos. There's a reason to do a specific move at a specific point. And when it comes to learning how to do good combos, one major thing you need to learn is how to combo into and out of specific hit reactions. So what happens when you slap knockdown immunity on everyone, which causes every move to have the exact same effect? There becomes next to no incentive to choose one move over another outside of frame data and canceling options. Kiwami tries to rectify this by boosting the speed of everything. Once again, this strays from other games in this series which tend to reward precise timing over sheer speed. And when you crank the speed of combos up this much, they become a test of how fast you can press buttons as opposed to a test of your game knowledge, which, in my opinion, is what good combos should be. Don't get me wrong, doing things fast in a video game is cool as fuck. I get why people like this game so much, and I wanted to present the combat in this game as objectively as possible, in case it might be something you are into. But at the end of the day, it's not for me, and I wanted to explain the drawbacks of this kind of design philosophy in case you're also not a fan. If you do want to learn more about this game, there's a playlist of guides by R-Combo, one of the best, maybe the best Kiwami player out there, as you can probably tell by the amount of footage I stole from him. These guides tell you basically everything you need to know, and he has plenty of videos showing off this game in action. At the end of the day, Kiwami isn't insulting in the way that 5 is, so I won't give it anything lower than a 4. Despite what I think, this game is very highly regarded in the community, and I don't plan on trying to rain on their parade. And that is the end of part 2 of the advanced Yakuza combo history. The series was definitely experiencing some growing pains at this time, as it began to shift between versions of the PS3 engine, up until the series was ready to move on to a new and improved engine as soon as the new generation of consoles was coming out. Next time, we'll be going over the beginning era of the Dragon engine, with Yakuza 6, Kiwami 2, and Judgment, seeing how the new engine completely changed basically everything the series had, and how it was sort of a soft reset that required some getting used to. And to round out this outro segment, I would just like to thank each and every one of you for the massive support on part 1 of this series. The reason that this part took a relatively short amount of time is because this and part 1 were initially supposed to just be one big part, but I decided last minute to split them up. So I already had the entire script written for the most part, and I already had all the footage I needed. With part 3, I'm going to be starting from scratch, so it might take a little longer, and I think I might make a different video in the meantime just to spice things up. But with that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.